Well, welcome Jonathan Bingle to our next in the interview for congressional candidate for Congress District 5. And
Yeah,
we're
thanks for having.
excited. You bet. Thanks for being here and being a part of this new interview series. So
Yeah,
we're going to go into this. I'm going to ask you a few questions. We'll start out with an intro. I'll give you a couple minutes to do that. Let me get my timer queued up here. And then we'll have 5 questions, give you about 3 minutes each, and then allow you to wrap up for a couple minutes at
good.
the end. So yeah, we're excited to hear from you. So Jonathan, couple minutes, tell us about yourself and
Yeah.
why you are running.
Well, first off, I just really want to thank the Spokane County GOP for doing this. As we were chatting about a little bit earlier, I just think it's really great how involved the party has become and how they're trying to insert themselves and help candidates get elected. And that is the purpose of the local party. And I think you guys are crushing it. And so thank you so much for doing that. I hope you continue along this road, and anything that I can do to help, I want you guys to know that I'm always here for you. Um, but I'm born and raised in Spokane. I went to Rogers High School. When I was in college, I started a business, and I left college to run that business full time, and that's what I've been doing for the last 15 years. I've been a pastor for 17 years. I've been a husband for almost 12 years at this point, and now a father to a 4-year-old and two 10-month-old twins. And so life for us is, I mean, people ask me all the time, how are you doing? And I say, living the dream. And they always want to say, you mean nightmare, right? And I'm like, no, absolutely not. I think that we have everything that we have ever prayed for. God has been very good to us. And so just excited about where we're going. And the thing is that while I feel as if, God has blessed us in many ways, and I live a very fulfilled life, I see some really, really disturbing trends in the United States, and we need somebody who's willing to speak to America's core principles and our first principles, willing to stand on the fact that we were, founded as a Christian nation, and not to wield that as a club and beat it over people's heads, but to say, like, we need a common morality, we need a common place where we can all come together and say this is right and wrong. And I see that under attack in the United States right now, and I don't see many people willing to stand up and fight for those things. And I'm a small business owner. We own an events business, and when COVID happened, we got shut down, and I needed people to fight for us, and we didn't have the fight that we needed. And so I want to be able to take the fight that I gave at City Hall. I want to take that to Congress and make sure everybody knows they've got a person willing to stand in the fire, even if I'm alone. Which I demonstrated when I refused to wear a mask at City Hall and got kicked out. So I mean, America's got a great future, and I want to ensure that.
Awesome. Awesome. So Jonathan, why do you believe that people should vote for you this August over your fellow opponents?
Yeah, I like a lot of my opponents. I think they're very good people, very good Republicans. I have been impressed with them over the years. I'm relatively new to politics, and honestly, a lot of the people that I'm running against were people I looked up to as I was, new in the political world. And so it's not as if there's a great deficiency there. I just think the battles that are facing the United States right now are unique and require a unique level of courage and conviction that I think I have that in spades. And I know I just mentioned this, but when the masking was happening around the state, when it was happening around the country, I'm a pastor. When churches were being shut down and weed stores were open, that was a huge problem for me. When my small business was deemed unessential, but Home Depot was essential, that was a huge problem for me. And the clear double standards that are being implemented throughout the city, we see it even today, right? In the city of Spokane, you put a skid mark on the Pride mural, and it's a hate crime. But you sit there and you can openly burn the American flag. I just think that we have a lot of double standards right now, and we need to get back to an equal application of the law, a fairness, true justice throughout the city, and throughout the country. Those are the reasons why I think people should vote for me, because there are going to be some difficult things where people say yes, but what about for people who don't believe in God? What about for people who don't do this? And we have to be willing to say that's great, but still, this is the principle that the country was founded on. We need to continue along these lines. And while I appreciate and respect my opponents, I just don't know that that's going to be their focus.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yes. So this is a concern I've heard from a lot of people that led to this question. Given the pervasive influence of money and lobbyists in Washington, D.C., along with the strong presence of special interest groups, how do you intend to effectively navigate and combat these pressures to genuinely represent and stand up for the interests of the citizens of the 5th Congressional District?
Yeah. Let me first start by saying something that might be counterintuitive or offensive to some. I don't think lobbyists are bad. I actually really appreciate lobbyists because I have to manage 100 different um, pieces of the city or pieces of Eastern Washington or pieces of the country every single day. And you know what I'm not the expert in? I'm not an expert in policing. I'm not an expert in housing. I'm not an expert in in a lot of different areas. And so what I need lobbyists to do is I need lobbyists to share this is how this bill will impact us, right? I'm not an expert when it comes to ag policy. And so I get asked questions, how is this going to affect the agricultural community? Honestly, I've never worked in that space. So I don't know. You tell me and then I can represent you in that way. Lobbyists inherently to me are not the problem. The problem is when it's this you scratch our back and we'll scratch yours. That's where it becomes a problem. That's something I've never participated in. As a matter of fact, I hate to keep going back to this one example, but when I was censured and kicked out of City Hall for not wearing a mask, I got a lot of phone calls from a lot of high-powered individuals in the city of Spokane saying, Jonathan, put the mask on and get back to work. Remember who elected you. And I got to confidently say, I am remembering the people who elected me, right? The people who elected me are the people that I represent. That's not to say I didn't appreciate your support in it, but in the end, I will always do what I believe is right because there are two scriptures that will be hanging up in my that hang up in my current office that will be hanging up in my congressional office, which is number one, who should we please, God or man? Okay. And it's obvious answer for me. And number two, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? I understand that one day I'm going to stand before God. And you know what I want to hear? I want to hear, well done, my good and faithful servant. The most terrifying verse for me in the Bible that I can see that personally terrifies me is when they said, Lord, Lord, didn't we do these things in your name? And he says, depart from me, for I never knew you. That to me is my main motivation to always do what is right, because again, there is an eternity after this, and I'm going to make sure that I'm on the right side of it.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Yeah. So you've alluded to this a bit already a few times, but I want you to go into it further, thinking about the congressional role. Given the challenges and controversies surrounding COVID-19 mandates, what specific steps would you advocate for at the federal level to balance public health interests with individual liberties? And how would you work to prevent the overreaching use of mandates for measures such as masking and
Yep.
vaccination and future health public crisis?
Yeah, we will never have those mandates again. I will never support those mandates again. I was affected the same as everybody. My wife and I are not vaccinated for COVID-19. And my wife, being a dental hygienist, it affected her license, right? It affected our business. I again can understand just about every single space that everybody is coming from on this because it personally affected me. And I personally learned how unfair the government can be when they get to choose winners and losers. And so what I'm going to advocate for is for good, solid principles and allow people to sink or swim on their own. We're not going to be doing government mandates. We're not going to be overly subsidizing things to make sure that certain industries are excelling while others are losing simply because they're not the pet project of those who are in elected office. We're just not, that's not going to be a part of my office, and that's not going to be a part of Congress so long as I'm there. And there was a second part to that question that I forgot. What was it?
I think just how would you work to, prevent the overreaching use of mandates? You talked on that, and then just balancing, the public health interests,
Yep.
with individual liberties.
Yeah, public health interest is interesting to me because I think it's a misnomer because I have an individual health interest. Okay, I'm going to make sure that I'm looking out for myself. I want to be healthy. I want to be happy. I don't want disease. I don't want plague. I don't want anything in my house. So I'm going to make sure I'm taking care of my house. And you know what my neighbor's going to do? They're going to be doing the same thing, and their neighbors the same thing. And my neighborhood all doing the same thing. And and we're collectively all trying to keep ourselves healthy. That's public interest. That is the public health. And so what we're going to do is we're going to empower people to make their own health decisions for themselves. And what's going to end up happening is we're all going to choose the thing that we want to survive and to live long, because it's inherent in our DNA, right? We choose to survive. We choose to perpetuate the species. And so long as we're empowering individuals, we're going to find that the public is empowered itself, because it's made up of the individual.
Nice. Nice. Appreciate that. This one's a few parts to this one. So if we take a couple more minutes, that's okay. How do you plan to address the most pressing issues facing our constituents, such as illegal immigration, cost of living,
Yeah.
and inflation, and crime and national debt? I know there's a lot there.
Yes. So we'll start with immigration. So I went down to the border. I was the first candidate to go down the border. I mean, 2 weeks into my run, I was down at the border, because it is the most pressing issue for myself and for many others. If you don't have a border, you don't have a country. If you don't have borders, you don't have a country. It's incredibly important that we secure our borders and we keep our people safe. Now, I believe the vast majority of people who are coming to this country are doing it for economic interests or for freedom. Because it's the greatest country the world has ever known. And I don't blame them for wanting to be here. I want to be here too. But we have to regulate the people coming into our country. We have to know who's coming into our country. And so what we would do immediately is we would fund the border wall. We would help finish the border wall. We would reform the asylum process to where you actually have to prove that you are in danger. We would limit the amount of people who can get asylum. We would limit the amount of people who could come into this country legally, and secure our borders. Because again, I understand why people want to come here. I'm glad that people want to come here. It continues to show me that we're the greatest country on earth, but it's got to be heavily regulated and make sure that we're keeping our people safe. Because not only are they coming here for jobs, they're coming here for housing, they're coming here for food, they're coming here for land. There's a lot of interest outside of just people coming into the country, and maybe they could be a criminal, or maybe they could be a terrorist. There's a lot of other things that are going to impact our people, so we got to regulate that. When it comes to just about everything else on that list, we are going to slash the federal budget on my watch, because what I have found is that inflation is entirely government driven. You look at great economists like Friedman and Hayek; they'll tell you that inflation is purely government driven. So what we're going to do is we are going to lower the corporate tax rate to 15%, and we are going to drop spending with that. And when we drop spending with it, not only are we going to find that inflation lowers, that the dollar is going to matter when our grandkids are here, that we're not going to have to worry about people who are retired and watching their dollars that they work so hard for not mean a dang thing, because now the currency is inflated. We're going to make sure that as we reduce that spending, it's going to make America more free. It's going to make your dollar matter. It's going to increase the economy, because we're going to lower the corporate tax rate, and you're going to see a ton of private investment. Now, with my spending plan, it also increased spending for police and defense spending by a net of $135 billion in 10 years. And so we're actually going to see fully funded police departments. We're going to see fully funded jail projects. We're going to see fully funded justice in our cities and throughout the country. And so I feel very confident that when I get to Congress, I'm going to be able to help Eastern Washington.
Yeah, that's a big issue for us here, with the
Absolutely.
police and their jails. So for sure.
And not just that, one thing that wasn't in there, and a question that should be asked: what are you going to do about homelessness? Because while I'm very focused on this as a city council member, this is something that is spreading all throughout our communities. And the problem is that this really is a federal issue. HUD gives us millions of dollars a year to direct in the way that they want us to spend it. So what we need to do is we need to change HUD's policies, or we need to defund HUD. If we didn't have $8 million a year coming into the city of Spokane, you'd see a drastic reduction in homelessness in the city of Spokane and throughout Eastern Washington. I appreciate that they're trying to help, but the ways that they're trying to help are actually killing us. And somebody with an understanding of homelessness needs to be in Congress so that they can advocate for good policies or be done with it.
Yeah, for sure. All right. How do you plan to engage with and be accountable to your constituents here in the Fifth?
Yeah, I think I do a pretty good job of trying to always be at community events and reaching out to partners, reaching out to the local parties, reaching out to people who are going to be affected by legislation that I'm working on or legislation that's coming through. I try really hard to get people involved, and it'll be the same thing in Congress, just 10 times more people than what I'm working with right now. But instead of having a staff of one, I'll have a staff of 20. And so I actually think that I'll be better at it than I am now. And I work really hard to make sure that people are involved. Because again, in the end, it's not my city, it's our city. And I truly work hard to represent people, and I'll bring that to Congress.
Great, great. Now, this is a question that I didn't let you know about because I thought of it as I was doing the first interview. I hope it's okay.
Yes,
If you don't want to answer it, you
totally.
don't have to.
I
But
honestly forgot all the questions you were going to ask. And so this is all off the cuff anyway. So yeah.
so who is your favorite congressperson in Congress right now?
Let me tell you, I have a nice personal relationship with Kathy McMorris Rogers. I'm incredibly grateful to her. She has always been very generous to me with her time, and I really appreciate that. When it comes to my favorites in Congress, I'm torn. I like certain aspects of a lot of different Congress people. I like Representative Jim Jordan. I like some things that I see out of Tim Scott. I know that Ron DeSantis is the governor now, but he was in Congress. Love Ron DeSantis. Chip Roy down in Texas I love Chip Roy. Like I said, there's a lot of people that I really look up to that I would try to establish a relationship with early. People that I know are budget hawks. People that I know are very good Christian moral people. That's who I want to be around, and that's who I'll surround myself with.
Gotcha. Awesome. Okay. Final comments. Take a couple minutes. And
I just again want to thank MJ. I want to thank you, and I want to thank the party again. The amount of participation I've seen out of this party in the last 2 years, over anything I've ever seen. And listen, I've worked in church world my entire life. I work with volunteers. I work with people who are serving their community, and volunteers, make mistakes, and sometimes things don't go right. That doesn't mean we should blow the whole system up. We need all new leadership. We need to fix. We need to do this. No, we just need to tweak things. People are learning. We have a lot of new, passionate individuals in this party, and that is something that excites me for the future of Eastern Washington. Because if we have this many committed, passionate volunteers that as they're in the game a little bit, they're getting some knowledge, they're getting some insight, they're getting some wisdom as they're going. Now it's not just passion going forward, but it's precision passion. I'm so excited about where we're going, and you and the team be encouraged. We are seeing, again, as a person in office, I appreciate how often you are sending people to city council. That didn't happen very often. I appreciate how often you guys are at events trying to get the Republican message out there, which is the best winning message for the country. Without you guys, we would be in a far worse place. And I'm just so grateful to you and your organization and everybody that's working really hard. You guys should feel very good about the direction that things are going. And I'm encouraged to see where we go. So thank you guys.
Well, thank you for saying that. I did not pay you to say that, right?
You did not.
Okay.
You did not. Absolutely not.
Any final comments as
No.
to why people should vote for you, Jonathan?
I think I've done a very good job demonstrating who I am as a Christian man, as a conservative, as a Republican in a very hostile environment. There's not a single person I'm running against who is operated in a minority the way that I'm in a minority. Still got drug laws passed, still made parks safer, still focused spending away from homelessness and into good community projects. The things that I've been able to do on a city council in a super minority where I'm 70% of the votes, over 70% of the votes not on my team, being able to get anything accomplished, I think is really great. And I really want to be in the majority. It sounds like a lot of fun. And I think getting to Congress, I think that same effective tenacity, that same presence that comes with being able to unite people, unite votes across a lot of political spectrums to get them to understand what really good policy is and how we can move forward together and how we can all win out of it. It doesn't always have to be a fight. We can all win in these things. That's what I'm going to bring to Congress. And I think that that's a really unique thing that, my opponents have never had to deal with. And so I think that I'm the guy.
Awesome. Jonathan, thank you so much for spending time with us today and sharing your thoughts, and good luck on this.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You bet.